Hi, everybody. It's Mary Kelly, and thank you so much for joining me for part two of strategic planning. Now, this is designed to help you again strategically help you think about where you want to be in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Now, part one, we focused on how to start, how to kickstart that into gear. And we talked about doing your SWOT analysis. The pestle analysis was the thing that surprised a lot of people in part one. Remember your pestle analysis. That's what's going on politically. And folks, if you've been watching the news lately, you know there is a lot going on politically. I get up every morning and watch about 3 hours of financial news while I'm doing other things. And several times in the past few weeks, I have just stopped what I was doing just to pay attention to the financial news because it is being impacted by politics. So that pestle analysis, again, is really helpful for a lot of people to look at what the political issues are going on, what economic issues are going on, what time issues you've got, what leadership challenges you might be having. So we're going to move more into that part of the analysis today as we move forward. So as we do this, folks, we started with part one. This is part two. You got the recording for part one. You're going to get the recording for this as well. And again, we're just going to go for about 30, 35 minutes, have a few questions, and I'm happy to take your questions in the chat. I can talk and read chat at the same time. It's a skill I learned when I was a professor and dealing with lots of students. So the critical question I think every executive has to ask right now is, where's our next $10 million idea coming from? Is it just us increasing our revenues in order to be a little bit better? Is there a new product launch? Is there a new thing? What new thing are we going to do? And when we talk about our next $1 million idea, a lot of people think you have to create the next great mousetrap. But what if it was as simple as looking at your costs and figuring out where we're spending $10 million that we maybe don't need to be spending $10 million? I know a lot of people are excited about the possibilities of AI, and I'm excited about it too. I love AI. I've been using it for years, and so have you. Every time you say, hey, Siri or Alexa, or you ask your GPS to do something, that's all AI. We've been doing this for years, as you all know. So what if it is something like, we are going to reduce costs because AI can do certain things for us? How are we going to find that next $10 million? And what does that look like? So ask your team, ask the people around you. If you are a business owner and maybe you're relying on a board of advisors or a mastermind group or some trusted friends, ask them the question, say, hey, where am I missing my next $10 million revenue source? Should I be doing something differently, acting on something, providing a service or a good that I'm not currently doing? Ask your folks what's going on. So we want to make sure that we are being strategic, not just reactive. And folks, I know right now, if you watch the news, it is very, very tempting to be very reactive. There's a lot of emotions going on in the news, but it's always been that way. If you talk to your grandparents or your parents, they're always saying things like, well, back when, this was this way back then, and this was this way back then. Folks, it's always had issues. The world has always had issues. We have to deal with the issues as they pop up, and that's leadership. And this leads into my leadership is tough concept. This is going to be my theme for the next few years. Leadership is tough, but you're tougher. And it's tough we make it tougher sometimes when we don't learn from the mistakes of others, when we try to do everything ourselves, when we don't branch out, when we don't try to learn other things. So a couple things. When you're thinking about your next $10 million in revenue, is it from existing customer growth? Is it from a new market initiative? Is it from new customer acquisitions? Some of your competitors may be retiring. Then for some of them, that might just mean they're just closing up shop. They're gone. You can maybe grab their customers. Do you have a new product? Where is your $10 million idea coming from? So let's just say you've got that idea. You're like, you know what? We could cut some costs, maybe using AI. We're going to go after some new customers. We do have a new product launch. We are going to make our own customers reinvigorated and reacquainted with what it is we do. So we're going to try to launch more there. And then maybe we're going to expand to some other areas. However you're going to do this, map this out. And then ask your team, are your sales goals connected to your marketing strategy, or are they operating independently? And this is one of the things that I get frustrated with sometimes with organizations, that the marketing team and the sales teams are not operating with operations. They're just operating in their silos. I know you've seen this over and over and over. It happens all the time. But map out what the initiatives are so that everybody knows what this is, and then prioritize for your marketing and your sales team what has to happen next. This is my top priority. I want this new product launch to be forefront of everything. I want every new customer to know this is what we do. I want our existing customers to be reacquainted with this because it's one of our cores and a lot of people miss it. Some of my friends got frustrated a while ago. We're having a conversation, and they said they had an existing customer who just loved them, and they didn't understand why that existing customer hired one of their competitors. And they were upset about it. So they called me. This is one of my coaching sessions. They called me and they said, "What are you doing? What do you think about this?" And I said, "Well, hang on." I said, did your existing customer know that you offered that as a product, as a solution to their issues? And they thought really hard about it. And I said, your existing customer really likes you. Why? They wouldn't have gone somewhere else if they thought you could provide this. So, folks, we have to remind people what it is we do. We have to be constantly doing that. Please, 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 if you get nothing else out of today, please do not assume that your existing customers know what you do. Please do not assume that your future customers are going to miraculously find you on the website and then actually read through your entire website. That's not going to happen. And please do not assume that when you say what it is you do, that people automatically remember it and understand all the nuances. So we have to be constantly telling people what it is we do. And that goes back to what we talked about 2 weeks ago, which was making sure our mission, vision, goals are really clear, not just with us, but with our customers, our existing customers, our future customers as well. So how can our sales leaders and marketing teams work better together? I love this question, but I don't want you to have to solve it. I want you to ask them. And even if you've got contractors doing this, get them together on a call and say, how can we work better together? Because this is our goal. Now, how are we both going to get there? How are we all going to get there? And then ask the question specifically, what can you do to support the person on the other side of that table? How can you support each other? Sales, how can you support marketing? Marketing, how can you support sales? And then make it very clear that the outcome is what's important. And to do that, specific actions need to happen. Map it out and make sure that people are both strategically and tactically aligned for what it is that has to happen. I talk a lot about a data-driven sales culture, a data-driven marketing culture, a data-driven corporate culture. This does not mean we take the people out of the equation. It just means that we're not making decisions based on emotional components. A lot of times I hear people talking about, well, I was going to do that. I was going to make that sales call, but I just didn't feel like it. Hang on. If you're waiting till you feel like doing something, that's an emotions-based decision. If you have a data-based decision, you think about, wow, if I make that sales call and all of a sudden I bring in this business, this is data, this is information, this is a good sale. And think about that instead of the emotions involved with it. To me, that's a little bit of a stronger motivation. So please don't wait till you feel like doing something in order to get something done in business. Business is about decisions and things that get done. When you see, I was just talking to a friend of mine, and her grown child, about 35 years old, is just having some struggles. And she said, yeah, she made a bad decision. And I had to stop for a second. I looked at my friend and I said, no, I'm sorry. She didn't make one bad decision. She has made a series of bad decisions for about the past 10 years. And that is why she's in this place. And she thought about that. And she said, and I said, I'm not being mean. I said, but this last little thing, it may have been the straw that broke the camel's back. But it was not just that straw. It was all of those straws. It was all of those decisions over 10 years that were done without thinking of consequences. So when we talk about building a data-driven sales culture, we're talking about how our sales strategy right now has to include what's showing, what's working, and what's not. And this is where sales and marketing sometimes struggle. Marketing, sometimes it's spray and pray. You hope things happen. You're not really sure where you can tie things back. You don't know what certain ROIs are from certain campaigns. Sales, think about it for just a second. You've got both leading and lagging indicators. Your leading indicators, things that are ahead of what's going to happen. You're going to qualify your opportunities. You're going to look at your sales activities per rep per week. You're going to look at what your proposal conversion rates are, the average time that each buyer might spend in that pipeline, and then maybe the velocity. The lagging indicators, things that are dragging behind the sales numbers, are your revenue booked versus your target revenue, what kind of win rates you've got, what kind of average sales contracts you've got, and what those numbers are. How much is it costing you to acquire each customer? And what kind of quota are we looking at? So we want to engineer the sales strategy. This is very deliberate. And I think this is where a lot of people just hire somebody and they say, make calls, go visit our customers. Hang on. I would say get to know the product really well. And that means talking to operations, talking to marketing, find out what the current marketing campaigns are so that you've got the same words in your head that perhaps your customers have been hearing so that it sounds familiar with them. And then create that unified revenue generation system. So this is, again, a more holistic approach to your sales strategy. So break down the revenue by market, product, geography, and customer segment to identify those growth activities. Yes. And then with the opportunities come the activities, and then you map that out. And then, of course, you know what the compensation is. But then look at the pipeline analytics. Look at how your conversion rates, your cycle times, your deal values, and the bottlenecks are happening. We talked about in the first session where your buyers are saying no. So let's say your buyers want something and they've said, yeah, we like this, or they're interested. Maybe it's an online sales opportunity where somebody just clicks a couple buttons, they're going to make the sale. Great. But then for some reason, that sale doesn't go through. And folks, we've all done it. We've all seen something on TV and thought, yeah, I'm going to buy that. We've seen something online, thought, yeah, I'm going to buy that. And then what happens is we don't go through with it. Where is the stop? Is it because you're buying a $29 product and then shipping is $9.99 and you're thinking, hey, is that percentage worth it? And you think, no, it's not worth a 25% increase in the overall price for that product. Or is it all of a sudden the sales process got too hard? Or is it because the sales payment system went through maybe a payment system and then it didn't quite work out the way it should have? Or maybe it bounced, or maybe it was, oh, you have to re-put in a password. Maybe you're trying to do it on your phone and now you're thinking, okay, this is just too hard. Where is the stopping of the buy? And that to me is critical. These are the bottlenecks I'm talking about. And then AI and automation, everybody is talking about this, but look at how you can use AI to improve your forecasting. So what you might do is take all your numbers from, say, last year and dump it into AI and say, where do you see patterns? Where do you see the best ROI? When we did this campaign, this is what we got, and see what it says. For fun, by the way, I was talking to a head of a financial institution, and I said, you ever use AI for your portfolio, for your own investment portfolio? And he kind of looked around, he goes, yeah, for my personal stuff, I kind of do. And I said, how do you do it? He said, I go into my portfolio and I copy it and I go into AI and I ask it, I go, what should I get rid of? What should I be buying? What should I be looking at? And it gives me a pretty comprehensive idea. And I didn't want to ask him if it's better than his own people are, but the fact that he was even using it just as another perspective, I thought was really interesting. So in section 5 of the playbook you got, this is the sales strategy framework. And it's really simple, but I think it's powerful. So when you've got your products, your services, your target market, your previous revenue, and then next year's percentage growth, it just gives you that metric in your head. I like to have the numbers there. And then what kind of current incentives are driving certain behaviors for your customers as well as maybe your sales teams? And then how are you going to use your CRM system with AI to be even more effective? Are you going to create a drip campaign? By the way, if you've not created a drip campaign using AI, it is remarkably effective. And again, you might want to say, here's the 4 different areas of touch points I'm trying to get to, and then you create the if-thens, and AI is really good at creating an email drip campaign. Okay, step 6. Develop your workforce and your leadership. Now, this is my favorite part because this is where I get to do a lot of my work. And again, this is the leadership development. This is the leadership self-assessment. These are the tools, techniques, and tactics I talk about all the time in my books and my programs. But here's what we have to pay attention to, folks. The crisis in 2030 is not this confluence of tidal waves and natural disasters and meteorites that some people are talking about. That's not it. The crisis of 2030 is by 2030, all the baby boomers will have retired. Well, no, that's not true. They will have turned 65. They are not retiring. And here's what's interesting about that. The baby boomers are staying in the jobs longer. And this has created a bit of a problem because the Gen Xers coming after them are looking at the baby boomers going, okay, if y'all aren't going to learn how to golf and fish and play pickleball and retire, we're going to retire before you do. And folks, that is happening. Generation Xers are retiring now, and they're not even 65 yet. Well, some of them are, but not really, depending upon where that line is cut off. You get the idea. A lot of people ages 50, 55, 60, somewhere in their 50s, when you ask them how old they're going to be when they retire, they give you the age they will be at when they collect Social Security. So for people that's 65, 67, 68, 70, whatever that age is, because that's kind of been mapped to when people retire in the United States. So a couple things. First, if you are in that age range, please do go to SSA.gov, Social Security Administration, and that's SSA.gov, and look up when your full retirement kicks in. Now, full retirement is not the same as your maximum retirement benefits from Social Security. So your full is when you can start to take it at what they consider your full rate. If you started earlier, let's say you've got a health problem or something else, you simply get less per month. If you wait a few years, you get more. In my personal case, I know that if I can start taking full, I'm an Xer, I can start taking full Social Security at 67. But if I wait till I'm 70 or 72, it winds up being about 65% more per month. So again, how you calculate that is look at actuarial tables. Look at the actuarial tables by the state you're in, then look at your family's longevity, and then try to figure out, ballpark figure, what might make good sense to you, and then please talk to a financial advisor. Okay, back to workforce and leadership development. Strategic planning without succession planning, to me, is crazy because you can't plan for the future if you haven't planned for your people moving on to either another job or retirement, or maybe having a health challenge and having to retire early. The worst thing that can happen to an organization with a strong, charismatic leader is losing that strong, charismatic leader. We know that for some institutions, big corporations, that leadership person is the face, the name, and kind of the brand of that organization. So think about a CEO whose name everybody knows. I can name some, you can name some, and they are the face, the name, and the brand of that organization. What happens when that person decides to leave? Warren Buffett just decided to retire. I think he was, I know he's well into his 90s or in his 90s. And he is so closely associated with Berkshire Hathaway that they were thinking, well, what happens when he retires? Will anybody be able to replace him? Well, he worked for years on his successor. So this is not a surprise, and things are moving forward. Is it the same? It's not the same, but it's really, really solid. And keep in mind, folks, you can't execute a 5-year strategy if you lose half of your institutional knowledge in the first or second year because something happens to that one critical person. So maybe right now, maybe the last couple of years, you're looking at your assessments. When we do succession planning, we identify critical roles. We map out the current talent. We assess the readiness gaps. And then we look at who is likely to retire given an age. We know that not everybody retires at a certain age. And for a lot of people, we don't want them to retire. We love their contributions and we want to keep them as long as we can. But that doesn't mean we don't plan for the future. And then maybe going into this year, you started to launch your leadership development programs. You're creating those mentorship programs we're talking about. And I know every time I say mentorship programs, my baby boomers and my Gen Xers all kind of just roll their eyes and they go, oh, here's more work for us. Yes, but no. A good mentorship program means you are gaining as much as you are giving, and that's critical. When I design these in organizations, we have experienced people with not so experienced people, and we map them, but we also rotate them every 90 days. And we ask them to meet once every 2 weeks for about 30 minutes. And we ask them to ask each other questions. What's going well? What are you proud of right now? What do you need a little bit of help with? And what are you grateful for? So a friend of mine came up with this GPS. What are you grateful for? What are you proud of? What are you struggling with? And both folks get a chance to talk about that and then share some thoughts. So again, we're not looking for big, onerous job shadowing or something that's going to take over your life or something that is only a one-way street. We definitely want mentorship to be a two-way street. And this is a way to not only break down silos, but systematically transfer knowledge. And again, shift every 90 days so that people are paired with different people. It keeps it fresh, it keeps it exciting. It also means that people are not just dragging the same conversations out over a year or two. And then maybe you're moving into the transition phase and you're starting to execute your succession plans for certain positions. I've got an organization I'm working with right now, and they are wonderful, wonderful people, but they are one person deep in all of their critical functional areas. And when I ask what happens to this position if the meteorite comes and falls on their desk, unlikely scenario, but you get the point. They're like, well, we would just have to hire. Well, what would be the process to do that? Well, that person would have to take lead on this. Well, what if the meteorite landed on her desk? What would happen next? And then everybody throws up their hands and says, we just don't know. And then you move on to the sustainability phase. And that's where you have a pipeline of leaders who are equipped for their future potential, not just what they're doing now. We don't want Bob to fill Bob's job. We don't just want to hire another Bob. We want to hire another person who's going to look at Bob's job, see what it takes to move that job into the future, and then be able to grow into that job. And this is where institutionalized development processes and leadership development plans are really, really helpful. The website where you grabbed the playbook and we sent that to you with the leadership assessment has some of those 5-minute plans. So on succession planning, and the book I wrote on this for succession planning, that was with Meredith Elliott Powell. And that book is called Who Comes Next? Leadership Succession Planning Made Easy. So in the past, succession planning looked a lot like a Rolodex. For those of you who don't remember Rolodexes, these were these little cards. It was actually pretty effective that were alphabetized. And you would just pull out the cards and say, yep, we got Steve. Yep, we got Dan. Yep, we got Sharon. And that was how our succession plan worked. It's a little bit more complicated now. So if you're stuck on this and you haven't ever thought about this, or you've got a small business, start by looking at which roles are really critical. And that might be your business manager, it might be your bookkeeper, it might be your lawyer, it might be your product designer. And then build a pipeline that might put that development into that leadership role. And then look at the probability. In the military, we talk about possibility. There's a possibility and a probability, a likelihood of something to happen. This is our threat assessments. So if it's probable, it's probably going to happen eventually. If it's possible, it's a little bit less likely. And then we want to make sure that we've got those knowledge transfer systems in place. In the military, we all put together turnover binders. And when you get the job, you've got a binder. And now it's electronic, but you look through it and you read it and you learn from it. And then what you do is you figure out how you're going to add to that for the person who's coming after you. And so you update certain things. Oh, that person's no longer the contact person over there. This is the person I actually need to call. And you make notes so that the person coming after you has the benefit of your knowledge. This is one of the things that I don't think enough organizations are doing. So the cost of inaction, okay, what happens without succession planning? Bad things. First, your people just leave you. I I remember being 21 years old, and I remember my boss said he would set me up with his financial advisor. Now, I am 21 years old. I do not know what a financial advisor does. I just knew that if I was going to be successful, I should have one of those. I did not know the difference between an IRA and a mutual fund. I did not know. I mean, I didn't know anything. And this lovely man sat me down. I'm 21 years old. And he walked me very carefully and patiently through different investment opportunities and traditional IRAs and Roth IRAs and how a mutual fund works into that. And all of these things gave me generously about 90 minutes of his time. He was about 65 years old. I am 21. I was in the Navy. I am getting ready to go to the Philippines for a couple of years. It wound up, I turned out staying in Asia for several years. And I asked him the question. I said, so here's the issue. Now, remember, I'm 21. There's no cell phones. There's no text messaging. There's no emails. I said, so I'm going to be sending this man 10% of everything I make every single month. And I was willing to do it. I was signing on. I said, but what happens if something happens to you? I said, who is my next point of contact? And he said the wrong thing. He said, well, I'm hoping my son takes over the business. I'm going to spend 10% of my income and give it to you. And you're going to hope that there's going to be somebody here to answer the phone if you die before I do. Okay, that's just not good planning. So without succession planning, your customers don't trust you as much. Relationships dissolve, strategic initiatives go away. Certain things just don't happen. So we've got to make sure that we are planning for succession. And again, in your workbook, you've got a workforce and leadership succession planning pipeline audit. What's the key role? Who's the incumbent? Who might be identified? And then on a scale of 1 to 5, how ready are they? On a 1, not ready at all. On a 5, super ready right now, can step into the job. And then under different characteristics, are they 3s, 4s, 5s? Where do they fall into this? And again, if you need help with this, we've got some succession planning worksheets that, again, are free for you. And that is at productiveleaders.com/2026 success. And I will put that in the chat at the end as well. So this is how you put this together. You look at your mission critical roles that are likely to turn over in the next few years. I would go out to 2030. Most people say, well, if you can get people to even think a year or two in advance, that would be great. But then you want to create a 12 to 24 month development plan for each successor. And it's for them as well as the person coming after them. It's the person who's leaving the job. So what can you start getting rid of now so that when you do leave, it's smoother? And then what does that person coming after you need to know? Again, it's very helpful if they can go to meetings with you, if they can participate in the discussions, if it's a C-level person, if they can start briefing the board, if they can start taking on those presentations. This gets the board more familiar with them, more comfortable with them. And then when they do get into that position, it's not an awkward break. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for a seamless transition into new forces, into new roles and workforces. Okay, so create the implementation road. So again, we started with defining the milestones and deadlines. Yes, look at your key objectives and then break them down. We always want to break them down so that people see the possibilities of getting things done. Lots of people see a big honking plan and they think it's too big, it's too massive, I can't do it. Then assign accountability owners. Now, just because you're accountable for it doesn't mean other people don't participate. And this is the danger. When you assign somebody just a specific job. So for example, think of an organization that assigned a new role like Chief Technology Officer. Okay, fine. Well, is that over all the IT? Don't know. Does that mean I don't do anything of my own technology? Don't know. Just because you assign that person doesn't necessarily mean they do all of it. It just might mean they're the point of contact for everybody else. And then allocate the budget and the resources to do that. If you're going to make something happen, you got to be committed and provide the resources to do that. And then establish your KPIs. Make sure that people know what it's going to mean and what it takes for them to be successful. And then, and I think this is the most important, set the communication cadence. Say, okay, great. Every Friday at 9 o'clock, we are all going to send each other what's been going on. These things have to be done by 10 o'clock. This is what we're going to do. Every Friday, we're going to give each other an update. I don't want 90,000 pages. I want 3 paragraphs of an update. And then you're going to add it to your update for the whole project. I don't want 90,000 pages. I want 3 paragraphs. And this is what we want. You're trying to keep things on track. You're trying to not overburden people with bureaucratic nightmares, but you got to keep that communication cadence the way it needs to be. And then quarterly review prompts. I love this. And it's direct, it's targeted, it's punchy. What's on track? What needs adjustment? What needs to stop? What needs additional resources? Is that people? Is it money? Is it budget? Is it software? Is it gear? What is it? And let's figure this out. And then when we look at the anatomy of the effective milestones, I just like this because for some people, it gives them an idea of what that looks like. Improve customer satisfaction. That's nice. We can measure the buy. Measuring customer satisfaction is more difficult, especially given a lot of the things we use. Where I take my car, I know that if my service guy, and it's always been a guy up till now, if my service guy doesn't get 5 stars, he actually gets dinged. He actually gets financially penalized. And once I found out about that, I was like, well, I'm not going to give you a 4-star then. But then one of the questions one time was, did we handle your vehicle in a timely manner? And he was having a real bad day. And after I've been waiting 4 hours for something that was going to take about 20 minutes, he comes out and goes, Mary, I got to tell you, I just forgot your car. I forgot you were here. I'm super sorry. We're going to get on it. And I was gone an hour later. So once he realized the problem, and I didn't really care, I was sitting there working, he made it right. I mean, he did the right thing. And I liked the guy. He's a good dude. But then they asked the question, did we take care of your problem in a timely manner? And the answer is, well, no. But I'm not going to say that. So again, sometimes creating a metric that doesn't give you a real picture is worse than no metric at all. I just want to throw that out. Okay. So somebody asked me how I might map this out. This is how. The dashboard designed for strategic visibility. This is huge. How are we being more visible, more intentionally visible where we want to be? I know on this call right now, we've got my friend Dan Janelle, who has done all my press releases for all of my books, all my programs, all my business things. He is a genius. He is great at this. I still think press releases are really valuable. I'm going to be talking to Dan about another press release here in the next month for the new book. But you've got to be looking very specifically at where you want to be visible and what does that look like for you as well as your customers. So your dashboard looks at, are we on track? What are the risks? What needs attention now? And then for your customers, where are we going to be more visible and what does that look like? And then step 8, review, revise, recommit. This is quarterly. Every single quarter, we look at this. What's working? What's not? Folks, it's helpful to know what's not working. Sometimes one thing worked because one person just forced it into working. And once that person's gone, we don't have anything anymore. That's okay. So sometimes that's why you have a quarterly review. It's time to relook at something and figure out what's going to go on. Maybe something shifted in the market. Maybe something shifted demographically, and then figure out where that resource allocation needs to be, and then get the team together and recommit to what needs to happen. And then the quarterly review framework, again, what's working, what shifted, what needs adjustment. I love this, just mapping this out. And this is also in your workbook. Okay, ongoing review and realignment. So quarterly, revisit your assumptions, adjust the goals, reaffirm the alignments, reassign the resources. Boom, that's what we're looking for. Here's why most organizations struggle, and we're almost close to the end. I just want to point this out. Many organizations struggle because people have to work together. And sometimes people don't want to work together. They may not see what's in it for them. They may not like the person in that other silo. They may interpret things differently. Some people don't have a strong team that works well together, that just doesn't support each other internally, so they're not able to support teams externally either. It can be all kinds of issues why organizations struggle, but it tends to be We don't have the cooperation cross-departmentally. We don't understand the economics of what's going on, either internally or externally. We don't understand the data, what the data is telling us. We don't have good sales and marketing alignment. Or the big one, leadership is afraid to make tough decisions. And leadership has to be willing to make good decisions and stick with them. My friend Michael Hoffman is fond of saying, an easy decision now makes things tougher later, and a tough decision now makes things easier later. And I think that's solid gold. So the strategic planning gap that you've maybe seen is we start the planning process, and then we can complete the environmental scans, and then we look at our pillars, and we integrate the marketing, we align the sales strategy, we build the implementation, and then we execute with discipline. So this is leading into what strategic planning is looking like now. So again, I'm hoping that this playbook was helpful for you as you are moving into this. And again, start at the beginning. Start with your mission, vision, goals. Break down those objectives into manageable chunks, and then map it out for the 12 months in advance so that you can see your top 5 goals every single month. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to ask if anybody has any questions. If you're again looking for a place to start, please do look at the strategic planning playbook. If the pages don't apply to you, just put big old lines through it and move on to the next page. The other tool I love is that 12-month business success and accountability planner. And I'm putting it in the chat where you can just grab all of that, plus the leader's blind spot assessment and my 5-minute plans for you today, just so you can grab that. And that's at productiveleaders.com/2026 success. So this replay is going to be made prettier for you by my amazing team. And then we will send this out to you with the transcript and the PowerPoint slides. We're going to resend out the playbook, and we're going to resend out this link. So folks, thank you so much for being here today. I sure have appreciated it, and I'll talk to you next time. Thanks. Bye.